Excellent. Over to you, Constanze.
Okay. So welcome to my case study, Henry. So I want to show you what I did in the past 8 weeks, which process I followed, and what I like, where the main challenges were, and also what I learned and took out from this for me as my current and future role as a product manager. And yeah, as we said before, for me, it was more about the outcome rather than the output. So it was more important to follow the process and really understand how to improve the daily life as a product manager. And therefore, I would like to start with introducing you to my principles, which I have defined are really key for me. And I think are really important in product management in general. As you can see, I have done this a little bit differently because on the left side, I definitely want to have like clean statements, okay, that you can keep them in mind and really like, yeah, that they can accompany during your journey. But I think it's really important to also understand why I'm doing that and also how to do that. Because I think you can come up with the best principles ever. If you don't take them into action, then they are kind of useless.
Yeah, definitely.
So I will guide you just through that. For me, I think, for me personally, and I think actually for every product manager, independently of the stage they're currently at, listening is always really important and the key, and much more important than the knowledge or experience they already have. Because you can be 20 years expert in some industry and still are not up to date with like upcoming challenges, and also customer pain points can be really individual. And even though if you are kind of expert in some area, if you're not listening closely what the customer is telling you, then you will miss out on the actual pain points. So my idea to action is here to really stay always humble and interact early with your niche. Don't assume you already know everything from the beginning, even though you consider yourself as an expert in a specific area.
Yeah.
Then the second one is data is more important than opinion. Why? Because we want to solve your real customer pain points. And if you don't use data, then it will be always kind of reflecting your own personal opinion, and maybe also what you as a product manager would like to work on, because it's technically interesting and you can improve your skill set there, which is of course also great and important. But with that, you will as a company never reach product market fit if you're just building on what you're keen up to building. So this is why it's always really important to collect data. How you can do that, actually, this is what we have done: run interviews, send out questionnaires, and also track that data. And what I also have discovered is key here: if you have that data, then also use that and don't ignore it. So be brave enough to, when the time have come, to kill your darlings and say like, okay, I was willing to work on this direction, but I find out it's not the right direction, and then make the move and say like, okay, it's time to pivot now.
Yeah, good.
Then the third one is experience is bigger than failure. And here I mean that growing experience is more important than the fear of failure. Why? Because if you're bold enough to go out directly to your customer base, then you can learn really, really quickly, and also have the possibility to pivot early on and bring everything in the right direction without losing too much time. And therefore, I think it's really important that you track your failures and embrace them, and also don't try to hide them. Because especially if you're working in a team, then you should even be more aware of that and share those failures with the others, because then they don't have to run into the same direction just to also find out that this wasn't right. So I think it's really important in a team to be that honest and really share those learnings, rather than letting your ego get in the way and it's like, oh, I don't want to share that because people think then, yeah, I made something wrong. You found that out for them, so be brave to do that. And the fourth one is value is more important than design. What do I mean by that? We still want to solve real problems. And I think we shouldn't over-engineer our first ideas, because then you spend also massive time on designing something where you don't really know if this actually brings any value to the customer. And I think this also is correlating to overcoming your ego, because sometimes you're just, oh, I'm into this position, and if I show this really unfinished prototype, what will people think? But I think also if you show a really early prototype, then people are not distracted by the design or anything, and can really focus on if it's giving something value or not at all. And therefore, I think it's really important to persist on the why is something a problem, to be sure to also solve that and not just cover into nice designs. And there, I think it's also really important to understand that the value is not at all correlated to the amount of features you're delivering. You can deliver 20 features a week and still don't solve any problem at all.
Yeah.
So really focus on the value rather than anything that comes aside. And the last one is future beats the past, I would say. I took this from one of the interviews I saw, because I really like the phrase, product is a living organism. And I think this is really important to keep in mind. Even though you have done your homework, you have reached product market fit, it doesn't mean that everything stays like it is for the next 10 years. Yeah. And you have to be aware of that. That's really important. And I think it's also, for some people, it also comes into overcoming your ego, because I think some people did a good job in what they have done in the past. And we don't want to, take away that success, but still it's really important that it might not be fitting the product or the market today. So embrace your success from the past, but then let it go and focus on the future.
Yeah, there's a famous quote, I think, from Charlie Munger, who's an investor, around, said, like, many mistakes are made by, like, sort of success. I can't remember what it is, success in the past. It's like the interpretation of what you thought worked 10 years ago that probably doesn't work now.
Yeah, I think this is really crucial, because of course you don't want to take away the success people have gained or reached before, but you also can't rest on the success for the next time. You have to be aware that things are changing, and that's not a matter of failure, it's just a matter of change. And therefore I really suggest iterate regularly on the status quo, challenge that, and go back to the customers, challenge if the customers from 5 years ago are still the customers, or if something has changed there. Okay, so this is actually what I believe is important to keep in mind as a product manager, no matter what you're doing. So let's come over to the process I was following. First of all, I think it's really important to draft a hypothesis. This kind of interferes with data is more important than opinion, but I think it's really important to have something really clear and precise to work on to even find out if this is going or can go into some direction. So even though it feels a little bit strange in the beginning to draft something which is really just based on your opinion, basically, it's still an important starting point, I would say. Because from there, then you can identify the niche and also talk to them, discover the pain points, and really dig deep into. And with that knowledge, then you can start ideating solutions to solve the core pain points. and also go back to them, make a minimal viable offer, say like, hey, I listened carefully to what you told me. I think this idea can help to solve your pain points. And then what I also mentioned yesterday during our session, I think it's really a good idea to also visualize what you got from them. Because even if you're a good listener and listen close and carefully, still what you hear can sometimes really be different from what they said, or even maybe they said it but meant differently. So I think it's really important to come with some visualization back to them and say like, hey, this is what I got from you. How do you like that? But as I said, no over-engineering, don't distract them with a perfect design. It's more about the value. And from that, then you can learn how the customer was reacting to your solution and then iterate. And then I made a break there. Iterate as much as possible or as necessary before you actually make a long-term commitment or investment. Because I can tell it's really frustrating if you spend little time on the research and long time on the development phase just to discover afterwards that your perfect and shiny product is not solving any problem and is not giving any value to nobody. Yeah, so this is a process. So let's start on what I have actually done. And as you can see in the upper right corner, you can also follow this during the entire presentation. I try to make clear which of my values, my principles I was actually following here. And you can also then follow if I were actually following or if I maybe missed out on them. But I will come to that also later. Okay, and the problem statement I was focusing on, or was my first, my starting point was that the belief was that young professionals are currently frustrated because they don't really have an investment strategy and they ideally want to own it themselves. I think this was very prominent topic last year. During the Corona dip, I would say many people started investing because it was really kind of a hype starting investing. But many people said like, okay, actually I have no clue what I'm doing there. I'm just trying to make out some money because I heard the prices are good at the moment. So this was actually what I was coming from. As I said in the beginning, it's always kind of weird to start with just an assumption, but you have to have, or you need a starting point. So I followed here, okay, growing experience is more important than failure, even though the first responses will be, okay, no, this is totally not interesting. Be brave and go out early on to know if there's a niche for this problem. So this is what I did. So the idea was that the lack of personal finances is a real and acute problem. As I try to follow data is more important than opinion, I ran 10 user interviews, or the goal was to run 10 user interviews to get some feedback. Here you can see the documentation for that. In the end, I think I sent out 80 messages on LinkedIn, got about 20 responders, were able to schedule 6 meetings, and in the end, I ran actually 4. So there you can see the funnel of that. And as I said, at this point in time, I didn't have any solution in place, but it was more important, like listening was more important than the actual knowledge to understand the niche and their needs. So there I could already draft the first learnings. First of all, I figured out, okay, it's definitely not young professionals. There were people of all ages who just missed out on coming up with a financial strategy in the last 10 years or something. So there were different age groups, and I rephrased it more to aspiring stock investors because I figured out okay, you need some general financial education for a holistic financial strategy. But the thing where it is really tricky and really hard to make a smart decision is the stock market. Why is that? There's a lot of information overload. You can't trust all the sources. It's about the financial mindset. People want to make money out of it, but are afraid to lose it at the same time because they don't really know what they're doing there. And they also narrowed it down to the lack of their financial education. So I tried to put the threats into opportunities with using the how might we approach. So how might we help aspiring stock investors to find the right information from trustworthy sources? How might we help them to work on their financial mindset and overcome the fear of losing money? How might we help them to gain financial education, and also how they can find like-minded people and exchange ideas and concerns. What I haven't listed here is that, of course, we did this blue ocean canvas, so took a look into who's already out there on the market. So back then I figured, okay, it's more about, or there's a lot of stuff already going on financial education, and also this community approach. So I tried to make it more on the other parts. So I came up with this minimal viable offer. We help aspiring stock investors to make smart and self-owned investment decisions. I tried to gather some data around that while building a landing page, drafting a survey, and the idea was to complete that because, again, data is more important than opinion. And this was actually the crucial part, because here you can see that the principle is turning into orange. So I came up with all of that, but then it was kind of hard to collect enough data to really draft down what the minimal viable offer can actually be. So then the next question was like, okay, what's the validated product vision? And at this point in time, I had to admit, okay, I don't know, because if data is more important than opinion, then I just don't have gathered enough data to actually say that. And then it was a question, okay, on how to proceed. I would say normally you should go back, iterate, and find that out before you continue. But like in terms of this, in this program, I was okay, pivot or persist, and are my principles more important than following the process? And I figured out that actually one of my principles, gaining experience, is more important than the risk of failure, also matches that. So I decided to follow up on the process, even though I didn't have a validated product vision yet. So this is what I did. And I built a customer journey map, a prototype in Figma, and then I arranged some user tests. And this is actually how my prototype looks like. So you have a really clean overview of top performing stocks. You can already see how the development were in the past, and then you can select one and get a more detailed overview. You can also get information about business model, and actually the evaluation metrics of the company, and also can see the last financial report. And then you have a different section where you can see how other people from that community rated the stock. And also you can go more into detail and see, okay, who are actually the analysts behind that evaluation, and see like, okay, are they trustworthy? Are they rated by other users? And in which fields are actually the expert areas, so automotive and pharma in this case.
Oh, interesting.
So this is what I did, and what I got, are you still there?
Yep, there we go. Yeah.
Okay. And what I get out from that was, I mean, on the left side, there was still, okay, where did I came from? What did I actually wanted to solve? So I wanted to have a structured and reliable information. The solution was to not overload this with features and make the company evaluation transparent, and also provide the actual core sources of that. The feedback regarding that was that the intro page was very clean and this was really positive. It was not like frightening to enter. Only question was if it's also, or that it would be nice to customize it more, that you can also, for example, not see the best performing stocks, but also maybe the best performing stocks out of the sustainable sector, for example. Then what I actually wanted to work on, based on the Blue Ocean canvas, where I said like, okay, there's the biggest need, or this is what the competition is not really serving really well, is like, okay, like not investing in the stock price, but actually investing and becoming a shareholder of the company and the underlying business model. And therefore you need to understand the company and the business model to build up really long-term trust, and don't get frightened if there are some dips in the stock price. So this was also why I made this analyzer set prominent in the middle, and I received the feedback that this actually helps to build trust and to build up some knowledge, but that this wouldn't be the reason to return to the application. So you actually want to find that out once, that this is a trustworthy company and it's good to invest. But then this is nothing you come back to on a daily or weekly basis. So this was actually...
Sorry, yeah? One more minute, Constanze, just to keep... so we have some time for feedback.
Yeah. So should I...
Yeah, sorry, carry on. I think just if you can try and wrap up in 1 or 2 minutes, then I can give you...
Okay. So I did that. I got some feedback. I think the most interesting part for the users were the community approach, because this also gave some trust, and you could easily follow on, who are the analysts. And still, as I said before, this is something that I found out during the research is something that I think the competitors are actually covering quite well. So the core question is, what can be the core value of like this product, and what can we do better than the competitors? There I just showed again, like, okay, what did the niche wanted and what they didn't want it. I will skip that for now, because I think what's now important is to really go back and understand, okay, who can be the high experience customers here? Is a niche really correctly picked? Or maybe was a channel just not right? Maybe I didn't find the right niche on LinkedIn, so maybe I should also try a different channel there. And then I would go back, update the landing page, go back and see on the market, what can I do better than the competitors in this direction, set this all up and really try to gather more data to make a valid estimate out of it. And then I would follow the approach, if I have done that, to actually generate some signups, and only after I know, okay, this is a valid idea, this can lead somewhere, I would start the implementation. Yeah. So, and that's all.
No, really, sorry. I knew you were quite close to the finish, but I thought I'd just nudge you along. Really good case study, actually. I'll go through specific points and then sort of overviews. I think intro and sort of context you provided was really strong. I think really important to like why are we talking about this? I think any content you're going to be presenting. Principles were excellent. I love that you made them your own. I think, you as someone a bit more senior, I think quickly becoming a product leader, like exactly the kind of thing you need to be doing. So you making those your own was really nice. I love the point about the future being more important than the past as well. It's really important. On the process, you talked just very, very clear explanation. You justified every point. It's like, okay, we have this defined. It's like, why is that important? So you're framing every point very well, which again is so important if you're trying to get buy-in, right, from your team or from stakeholders. So I think really good. Love the point about the sort of needing to visualize things. It's clearly like a good learning that you had as well. I love having the principles throughout, again, making the whole thing your own. I think it was really nice. And a great way is storytelling ultimately. It's easy to have principles listed, but you have to be showing how they come to life. So again, great leadership tactic, I suppose, to have. Problem statement, really clear. I like the sort of USP, that unique take you're looking at, like, people, non-investors in a way, people that haven't quite jumped in yet. It's really interesting. LinkedIn, great again, the fact that you actually went out and did that, reached out to 80 people, and you showed it has benefits, right? If you persist, you do a lot of people, you're going to get your 5 interviews, 4 in that case. Great. Good. I think you nearly skipped up the blue ocean. I was like about to write down, this is, I think, in this busy market, right, sort of financial advice, I think really important to talk about points of differentiation, sort of what you're thinking there. Prototyping, yeah, awesome. Not only to see nice prototype that fit everything that you'd said before, but also the fact that you've obviously gone back and improved upon it since we last spoke, which I think is great to see. And that focus on that differentiation that we talked about, right, with the sort of advisors on the right. I thought you could have added a hook on the main page. We talked about this last time, right? That first page could just be any financial app. So I think, how can you really, and this will come obviously in the next steps, how can you really show like, hey, this is a different product? Learnings were great. Product market fit engine, great to see that you've gone through that, and really powerful learning to have. Yeah, I think just generally like very, very clear. You justified everything. The flow was very good, and you've gone through the process really effectively over the 8 weeks, and the next steps just made complete sense, I think, based on your learnings. And I think, and it really nice to see the realization, sort of separation from ego that you've had around knowing that you need to sort of do better in terms of differentiation. I thought that was really good. I think it'd be really easy to to just say like, oh, we've had this sort of community thing and that's going to be enough. And it's great to see that you're pushing yourself to get like, actually no, it's not enough. Like, it's too similar to competition. I think that was really powerful. And then I think general comments from the 8 weeks. Have you felt that I've felt like I've seen you grow in confidence over the program? I don't know if you feel that as well. I think speaking up more, I think you're coming with really good ideas as well in many of the conversations we have. So I think there's like a growing in confidence, which is nice to see. I think persistence, again, like you stuck with it. We talked about this the whole time, that this is a difficult market. It's really hard to find, because there's definitely a problem, but there's so much competition. You have to find what is that unique thing. It's the kind of thing, if you were to do this as a business, like if you stick with the process, you will definitely find something there, 100%. So I think really good to see you sticking with it and being confident, not panicking and pivoting to something easier. So I think that's great. It's a great learning to have, like an internal learning, and also, just always having the right mindset, sort of approaching things really intelligently. As with the presentation, like really making your own the principles was great to see, and the learnings as well were like very insightful. I think just you really got the right mindset to be an effective product leader. I think now the challenge is how do you bring this stuff into your company? I think ultimately you're not going to transform a traditional organization, but you can start cracking away at it. So I think there's 2 parts to that. One is realizing that every time you implement a good product process, like you are improving your skill set and your impact. So I think there's that side of it, and ultimately, like even small things like introducing an MBO, landing pages, like those will have more impact, and then ultimately you're building more and more trust within your organization. To at some point, you're able to come in with like, here's the vision, here's the strategy, and everything's moving in that direction. So I think being quite consistent and bold, and you know best how to, I can't give you advice on here's the playbook. It's to see where you can fit things in ultimately.
Yeah, thank you very much, Henry, for the feedback. I really enjoyed the program. It was super helpful. I think the community was great. It was so nice to talk to the other participants and see how it's going on their side. It was also helpful. As you said, sometimes it was not really easy for me in the market, and
busy with work as well.
Busy with work, and it was really nice to have people around who are kind of facing the similar challenges. So this was really nice. And how do I want to proceed? Actually, I already started a little bit. So I started last week a pilot in my company. We defined our customer segments more into niches, and put out responsibilities, so more into product owners and product managers. And now we are drafting questionnaires and want to interact more with our people or with the customers, to really challenge the status quo, because this is something, as I told you, think about the future and don't rest too much on the past. We already have this huge customer base, and I think it's really important to interact with them again and see if we actually still solving any pain points for them, or if we are maybe just a partner anymore because the contract is still running, and the next time it's possible they drop out, for example. So we definitely started defining the niche more and interacting again with customers that we already have.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's the smart way to do it, because also, if you can get a marketing win, so some way of showing, hey, here's how we were more specific, and here's how it reduced cost of interaction or some activation, then you start showing some results, and then you can start trickling it into the sort of core product processes. So I think that's really good to see. Yeah, I think I'm fully confident that you're going to take these ideas forward and sort of gradually push. I think you're definitely in a good position to really move forward with your career, which is nice to see, I think, from our side. But anyway, as I said, we're really going to be pushing a lot of community activities. So we've got first workshop in 2 weeks, I think really worth attending. Strategy Decider. So how do we take the MBO and actually put it into practice in a company context? And then AMA every month as well. It's a good place to come with any questions. Awesome. Thanks so much, Constanze. Honestly, really great for me as well to see the presentation. I think it's a nice, really professionally done, really good to see you taking every learning, literally everything we passed on, I think was in that case study. So thank you for putting the work in as well. Yeah,
thank you for mentoring me and also being very persistent on pushing us.
It
was super fun and I enjoyed it totally.
Great. No, that's great to hear. That means we're doing our job properly. Well, awesome. Thanks so much, Constanze, and have a good weekend as well.